Welcome, everybody, to January Donovan podcast. I'm so excited to share with you our guest who's actually made my dreams in some ways come true in a way that I never expected. It's so fast and so quick, two times over. So it's kind of from a distance, his work has truly transformed not my life, but also so many of your lives, because I'm here because of so much of what's possible. So welcome, Mr. Chandler Bolt. Thank you so much
January,
for
great to
being
be
here.
here. And you know what you're alluding to, I was just showing you, right, thank you for sending me the book. The book looks amazing. If for people, if you're listening to this, not watching it, check out January's new book, Redefine Success for Women. It looks awesome. You get to do a great job on this.
Well, thank you. So I want to just do a backstory so that everybody can have a story where I even learned about Chandler 5 years ago. I thought I need to write a book, and I didn't want to do anything with women because I thought I was done with women after working for 20 years teaching women. I thought I'm going to work with children and I'm going to work. So my husband decided to write a script book for kids, and I found you. I don't know how. And you had a course on how to write a best-selling book, and we literally followed it to a T and hit bestseller. It was quite miraculous in my, in sort of where I was coming from. And then last year, when I had, launched the women's school 4 years ago, I think it was June of last year, where you invited us for your live workshop, and a live workshop to write a book right there, which I thought was so cool because it was just a writing weekend that really sort of got my mind going. And you said you wrote, I think it was published, the book published in like 3 months, I think. You said, I'm going to write this in September. I'm going to get on December. I was like, there's no way you could do that. There's just no way. That's impossible. And anyways, but I've kept that in my heart. And through your, your team and your coaching really kind of made it possible, which I didn't think was possible. So we launched the book, your inspiration, but really your guidance. So I just have so much to be grateful for. And from, I wrote so much, Chandler, when I was there on the weekend, and you guided us, which is so great, to just get things going. But then there's just so much to learn in writing a book, but I think every step of the way your team really helped us. So I want to just thank you because what I thought was a dream didn't happen. So today I want our audience to just learn about how you do it. I know that's sort of the background, but then I have a few questions, and really my goal here is for them to kind of almost walk the journey that I walked through of some thinking, can I possibly write the book? So awesome. Well, first of all, Chandler, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of what even brought you and inspired you to kind of lead 77,000 authors already to write their books. I think it's pretty neat to get a little background of who Mr. Chandler Bolt is.
Yeah, I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD who, I went from hating reading and writing to falling in love with it when I dropped out of school, because I realized that the smartest, most successful people had written a book that solves the biggest problems that I have in my life. And for $15 and a handful of hours, I can learn the best things from them. And so that's where I kind of started to fall in love with books. And at the same time, I wrote and published a couple of my own books. They did pretty well. And then people said, hey, how are you doing that? And that led to ultimately creating Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com. And we're on a mission to publish 100,000 books by 2035. That's the goal. And we've published about 7,000 or so in the first 8 years. So a lot of books published and a long way to go. But we believe that books change lives. They change the lives of readers and of authors. And so I think really we run a personal development company, but where books are the vehicle that we use to teach people a lot of other lessons that go beyond the books and help them grow their business and all that stuff through a book. So that's kind of the on a bumper sticker backstory.
Yeah, but I think of what you said, it's a personal development you run a personal development company, which I've never really heard you say that before. But it really is sort of true, because I feel like you're kind of a student of that. I mean, you've grown a company from 0 to, I don't know, 37 million in like
45 to 50 million or so.
I mean, give or take maybe $1 off.
Yeah.
I
on the day. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. And is that 8 years, Chandler?
Yeah. Yep. I guess 8 years and maybe a month or two.
Give or take a day or hours, But I think what's impressive is that maybe you could even say how books played a role in how you did that in almost 8 years. Like, I think that's a
Yeah.
profound statement.
Yeah. I mean, I call it the college dropouts approach to learning. Is when I dropped out of school, I felt like I was in school for business and entrepreneurship. And I'm like, oh man, I missed out on all the classes that I thought would teach me the knowledge that I need to run a business. So I'm gonna have to learn that somewhere else. So going to conferences, going through online courses and reading books, like those were my three main mechanisms of learning, but especially books. And so just one very practical tip for people who are listening or watching this is, people always ask me for book recommendations. It's like, hey, what book should I read? And my first question back is, where are you trying to grow?
Mm.
And I think that's the most important question when you're deciding on what book to read, because I'm a big fan of just-in-time learning. So I want to learn it and implement it, not just read books, put it on the shelf of Steam. Like I've got all my books up here and I feel good about myself, but I didn't actually do anything with it, right?
That's good. I'm going to use that, my shelf esteem.
It's all the books that you never read that you feel good about because you bought them, right? And so that for me is it's always, okay, where am I trying to grow right now?
Yeah.
And what's the best book on that subject? All right, let me read that book and I'll go deep on a subject with a bunch of different books around that thing, or deep on an author or something like that. And so that's how I use books to really fuel the growth of Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com, because it's just always reading related to the biggest challenges in the business.
It's just amazing. Really, like you said, books change lives of the authors and the readers. So, well, okay, some questions here, because I think our audience are the ones that are thinking of writing a book, maybe afraid of writing a book, maybe never thought of writing a book, but maybe thought about it before, but never thought it was possible. So a few questions here for you. What do you think what opportunities have you seen in your experience have opened from people who've actually taken the courage to write that book?
So many, gosh, like we always kind of say that, book is like a key that opens the door to Narnia, right? It's for the Chronicles of Narnia fans, that they discover a key that opens this door to this magical world that they didn't know existed, right? And this is what happened for me, and is what I've seen happen for so many other authors that we've worked with. Is a book is this key that opens the door to all of this opportunity that really only exists for published authors. So there's leveraged impact, which is doing work once, create a book, and then that book goes on to impact thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people, right? So there's the impact piece, there's the income piece, which is, mailbox money. Even if 3 years from now, your book only sells 100 copies, let's say, in a month, well, it's a couple $100 and mailbox money and royalties, right? But then I think the most powerful thing, especially for a lot of people listening to this, if they are starting a business or have a business, is a book is the best thing that you can do to grow your business, right? And so I feel like that was the big part of you with you writing this book, is like, all right, let me crystallize a lot of my best knowledge and information into a written form, so that then you can scale beyond you, right? And that's what I think. I love watching you do this, because it's very similar to how I think, which is, all right, let me have this one resource that then if someone asks me a question about a thing, I just say, hey, go read the book and then come back to me if you have questions. And then in reading that book, a lot of people will read it and say, oh, this is really good. Oh, wow, January runs the women's school. So that's really interesting. Like, maybe I want to be a part of that, right? And the book is related to redefining success for women, right? And so the book's related to the business. So then that leads to sales, referrals, business. But then it's also a framework for your team, right? Where you can say, hey, if you're new on the team, if I just hired you, well, then read this book first, and this will be the overview of our process. So now you're spending less time as a business owner onboarding your team, teaching them the process, all that. So it's just so multi-purpose. And I think it's the best thing you can ever do for your business.
That's actually really, I didn't think about that even for the business and to even use that. But if I were to go
customers,
back,
right?
Yeah.
Like, sorry to interrupt, but,
No,
but like,
right.
This is one of the first things we do with our customers, is like send them the book and say, all right, as part of your onboarding, read this book. And so now all of a sudden my staff isn't having to repeat ourselves all the time. It's like they can add ancillary knowledge to the base, which, for me is published, right? But reading that book. And so it just brings leverage to every part of your business.
Yeah, and I can pretty much be a testimony to this, because we have a coaching brand, and we would have to explain so much. And yes, it's there, but now we send out the book and they're like, sign me up. I mean, literally, it's like what If I were to
That's
go
cool.
back, I would have said I should have done it honestly sooner. Like I kind of did it
Mm,
backwards to go into business.
mhm,
We grew really fast, but I think we would have grown faster, to be honest, if I were to look back. I mean,
mhm,
all is well and life happens for you, but I felt like the book would have made even our work in the last few years easier as it's doing now. Like from the
right.
book, I just want to give testimony here because I want to sell them on the idea that the book does exactly what you're telling them, is that from the book, we've opened a book tour. Like something I never would have done, which is I just did my first book tour launch workshop in Kentucky where I'm teaching what I'm teaching in the book live. And you were the one who told me that, Chandler. Like,
That's cool.
bring in your best stuff. I'm a really good student. Everything you say, I'm like, that's what Chandler said. I'm just going to do. He told me to write a book in a month. I'm going to do it. So he said, write your best stuff in the book. And that's literally what I did, to a point where I wrote it all in 1 month in October. I read it. I was like, this is not my best stuff. I crashed the book and rewrote it again. And I was like, no, we have to put our best stuff in the book and not be afraid to put all the best stuff. And it's opened doors that I really would probably not have had now. It does, like you said, it leverages his time and your energy. So I guess I'm a living testimony of I should have done it sooner. And if you're listening, you should do it sooner and not make your work harder for you. It really kind of encapsulates the brand, and your book published, it's amazing like how good the content is there that actually makes people want to trust you, to want to invest even deeper into sort of the coaching. Well, I didn't read that book, the published, but when I have your program and then I have the book, I'm like, it's pretty amazing how much you're able
Mhm,
to give them,
mhm.
like the value. Um, so yeah, and I think I think it should be the first thing we should do.
Yeah. But either way, I mean, the benefit of doing it later is, you have the feedback
That's
from coaching it
that's actually,
live. So you definitely wrote a better book because you workshopped it out in the wild.
yes.
But one thing I would recommend for you specifically, and anyone else like this who's listening, is I would send that book to every past or existing author. I'm using my lingo. Every past or existing customer that you've ever worked with, and with some sort of one pager or a call to action, because it's just a way to re-engage that audience.
Wow,
And what
that's
I'd also
profound.
do is when new customers sign up, I'd say, here's 2 copies of the book. Here's one for you. It's going to help you get up to speed and all the stuff on how we do things. So read it. But then here's one copy for someone who needs help with insert the problem that you solve, right? And so now all of a sudden you're turning customers into refers. And so, because they might not say, oh, hey, you should work with January. They might say that, but it's a little bit more of like they're putting themselves out there and like kind of what's in it for them. But they're way more likely to say, hey, I just read this book, or I'm about to read this book. January gave me this book and said, I need to give it to someone who I think it'll help. I think you'd like this. And so now all of a sudden, a lot of people say a book is the new business card. I
Yes.
think it's better than a business card, because for $5 to $10, you've just put something in someone's office or home that they're not going to throw away like they would your business card.
Yeah.
And now every time they see it, they think of you. And so now that you've already had early success with this book, growing the coaching business, it's kind of like the way I view my book published is we just want to paint the earth, and I'll give away as many free if I
That's
go
what I
speak
say.
somewhere, I'm bringing books. If I'm at a networking event locally, I'm bringing books. Like if I'm, you
I need a
you
new
may have seen me
backpack.
post about this. What's that?
I'm like, that's what I did this week. I'm like, I need new wheels in my suitcase because these books are not
Yeah.
heavy, but it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're saying, and I'm a good student, so I'm going to follow exactly what you're saying. So I think, thank you for that advice. I am going to take it like I have taken all your advice. So thank you. Okay. So next question here. If somebody's listening here and they're saying, you know, roadblock after roadblock, I can't, I'm afraid. What do you say to people who feel like I can't, or what have you noticed, observed are the biggest fears of people, and how can you overcome those roadblocks?
Yeah. The biggest fears are kind of things that keep people from getting started is typically we've seen, say, who am I to write a book? Like,
Mm.
I'm not a celebrity. I'm not Oprah. I'm not January. Like, who am I to do this? Or maybe, hey, I don't have time or the timing isn't right. Like those are the two big ones. And I'd give an encouragement and then a very practical next step. The encouragement would be, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know a little bit more than the person that you're teaching. And
Mm.
so you don't have to be a celebrity to write a great book. And in fact, there's a lot of people who don't read many books, and they wouldn't read a book from, okay, this is Tony Robbins, or that might be a little bit too distant for them. But they might say, hey, I relate to January. I relate to your story. So I'm going to buy and read this book. And this might be the only book that I read all year. Right. And so that there's really a lot of power in that. And it makes for, in my opinion, a better book, because it's the best people to learn from are people who are 2 steps ahead of us, because they're not so far ahead of us that they don't know what it's like to be where we're at. They don't remember it, right? But they're a couple steps ahead. And so that can be a really great book. And then the practical thing I would teach is, I have this process in my book published. It's called the More Writing Method. And MORE is an acronym. It stands for mind map, outline, rough draft, and editing. And these are really the first 4 milestones in the 8 milestones of writing a book. And so the practical tip would be, take 15 minutes as soon as you're done listening to this podcast and mind map everything you can think of on the topic of this book. And even if you're like, oh man, I don't really fully know what the topic is, mind map on the book that you think you might write, and just take 15 minutes. And I think what you'll find, and what I've seen, gosh, at this point, I don't know, tens of thousands of times, is the light bulb turns on for people and they start to realize, hold up, I've got a lot more that I could write about than I think. And so that usually is an encouraging starting point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you did in Texas when I was there, because anything, what I wrote there was nothing what the book became, but what it did was it literally dumped out everything that was in my head. And that process itself, I think, became sort of a motivator, and kind of like, I felt like I did several mind map, and, and that was very helpful. I think that process that you kind of took us through, because it really is possible. I mean, if I could do it, and I was like, am I even a C student? I was like an immigrant who really struggled with grammar and English. So it was kind of a big deal for me to even write a book. And that's actually what held me back, was because I felt like I was burdened with a message in my heart, but I always felt like I couldn't write it because I felt like I was sort of that C student in grammar that never learned proper English. But gosh, I feel like the biggest roadblock I had was to just get started. And I think it probably is for a lot of people. So going to that workshop that you did just got me started. And I didn't know where to start, and I know do you have that several places around the country?
No, actually, it's so funny. It's very encouraging hearing your success with that. And a lot of people had a lot of success, because that was the first and only time that we've ever done that.
Are you serious? I'm the fruit of that.
I'm not, yes, I am serious. Let's say I'm not serious. I'm not kidding. I am serious. It very much mimics, like, we run virtual ones of those all the time for people that are working with us. We do half-day write your book workshops.
Yeah.
So it's, it's not quite the same. It's not like flying somewhere and 2 days in person and all that. But that's the only in-person of it. And I think there's a good lesson in there sometimes for some people, which is like, we are so teaching oriented. Like when we get in working with people, we just want to teach. And it's always, all right, how can we make sure that we're teaching and helping as much as possible? And sometimes the best help that you can give is the space and direction to implement. And that's really what that event was about, which is probably, 20% teaching, let's call it, and 80% implementation, writing and working on your book. And so I think that was a fun and effective format.
I can't believe that was the first time you did that, because I feel like that's actually what sold me, because to me, I actually got to enter into the writing space, and it was like you had this time clock. I thought you had been doing that. I guess you've been doing that virtually, but it forced me to not just like sit and listen. Because if you did, I would have sat and listened. I would have never written,
right?
Because I would have just learned, right?
Because it's one more thing, and you're like, well, that was inspiring, but now I'm leaving with one more thing to do, and I'm already really busy.
Yeah, and I kind of came back there I felt like I had 30 pages, honestly. Chandler, and a whole, mind map. So I feel like I was the biggest beneficiary, probably. I mean, I'm sure everyone did, but of something that you just did once. I don't know, to be honest, if I would have jump started it had I not sort of flown there and did it live. I
Mhm.
mean, I just don't think I would
That's
have
it.
probably committed to it, to be
Mhm.
honest. Just
Sounds like
because
we need to do more of
busy. Would you
them.
say?
Yeah, I said, it sounds like we need to do more of them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm telling you without
Because you're
telling
one of our favorite
you.
people to work with. I mean, we love working with you, and we want to work with more people that are like you. So if that's the mechanism that work well, then it sounds like I need to do more of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my own personal thing, but I think it was the same for, I think, a couple of team members that were there. Yeah, so, and you know what it is for busy people, I feel like that was the only way I could have done it. Because I would have not carved out time to be able to
Mhm.
kind of do it. And if I had not committed to working, I think, with a coach, I don't know if I would have done it. I mean, to me, that was hands down
Yes.
because Brett, I said, okay, so January, when do you want to write this book? I was like, at some point this year. And then I had that speaking engagement with John Maxwell at Ed Milet. I was like, just kidding. I actually need to get it done by January. She's like, well, you need to get your outline done by September. I was like, you mean outline? And I was like, okay. He goes, and then you need to have the book written by October. I was like the whole book, and he's like, yeah, like the whole book, if you want to work backwards in January. And I was like, okay, I'm a good student. I'll just do what you tell me to do. I mean, but it's amazing because when you're held accountable and you just sort of commit to it, you'd give yourself no out. So to me, I don't know if I would have really done it any other way, Chandler. Because I mean, I'm running a business, so there's so many other ways. So I'm really grateful. And I'm grateful for, I think, the coaching that I received because it really held me accountable. And then afterwards, I just want to share this. Afterwards, your team was very helpful in helping me. I don't know. I want to say give birth because that's my language. Like I have too many kids. That's how I think about things. So like literally give birth to a book of like formatting and like the things that you just really, and it was amazing. Like we literally had the book ready in January. Great. And I think that was your team, I would say, really just help us with that. So I just want to thank you
That's
for
awesome. Thanks for
you
sharing.
tell me what to do and I do it somehow. So okay, so last question here is what's the most rewarding thing that you personally, I would say, received by helping so many people like myself and just authors after authors on a personal level?
Oh man, I think it's fun seeing people grow and seeing their businesses grow and their impact grow and all those things through a book. And so, as one person on my team put it, we were talking about this at our offsite is, we facilitate one of the 3 or 4 best days in most people's life, right?
Mm.
It's, probably when they got married, when they had a kid, and maybe there's a couple other things there, and then there's when they publish their book,
Yeah,
right? And
I
so
would
it's
say that.
it's we just get to make that magic happen, and it's a lot of fun to be able to help people who help people, because books change lives, right? So if we're helping an author, we know that that's a minimum of 1,200 people that book is going to impact in some way, and then hopefully way more than that. And so that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
Well, thank you, because I think that's a testimony. And I also, our listeners here, I feel like we have so, um our belief is that, we have this wholeness school where we live an integrated life. So we have so many men and women here that are honestly, they have a book in their heart. Like that's our audience and such quality people. And I feel like they just need that one last, which is why I believe in what you do, Chandler, because I'm a fruit of it, but I also think that our audience have so much to offer with their voice because I feel like they really have the biggest heart. So, if anybody's out there in the fence, I'm a living testimony that it works and that you can do it too. I just want to encourage the moms out there, and we've got our coaches, but then we've got just thousands of students at this point. I think we have 4,000 students across 40 countries that are doing this because they believe so much in a life of impact. And so I know, and I believe truly that they too have a message in their heart. So if anybody's listening here, and I'll let you have the last word, Chandler, and if you're interested in writing a book, I recommend Chandler on a personal level because I've experienced it, but I think also because your content is really solid. I've seen your webinars. I'm a good student. I actually follow your your webinar structures and your trainings. And you know, I can't recommend you enough, and I can't really thank you enough, because I think what you've done for me was not just for myself, but really expanded the dream to so many other women who saw my journey, but then also who's been able to be impacted, because now we have something to share with them. So thank you so much, Chandler. The one, you know, I'll give you the last word and share audience where they can find you, and just really encourage them to be able to give birth to that book.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, I mean, if you found this helpful and interesting, and if you'd like to take next steps with your book, there's two things that we have that'll be helpful for you. First one is I'd love to gift you a copy of my new book, Published. You can obviously grab it on Amazon or listen to it on Audible if you want. I narrate the book, but if you're in the US, I'd love to ship you a free copy of the book, no strings attached. All you have to do is go to publishedbook.com/January. So publishedbook.com/January. The first 50 people that go there will ship you a copy, no shipping, no handling, no anything. We'll cover all of it. So that's the first best step for people. And then if you're thinking, hey, I'd really love to work with you guys, just go to selfpublishing.com/apply. You can book a call with my team. We can chat with you and say, hey, tell us about your book idea. What are your goals for your book? Kind of get some clarity and some next steps. And then see if it makes sense to work together. So those are probably the two best resources. There's never going to be a perfect time to do it. You're going to have to get started before you're ready. So we'd love to help you.
Thank you. I think that's the best advice, is you have to get started before you're ready. I was not ready, and it all happened. So thank you so much, Chandler. Thank you for this time. And I hope that you take advantage of it. And I really think that now is the best time. That's what I would say. So thank you, Chandler. Thank you all.
Thank you.